Hello everybody, Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan Living Life with Purity. And for those of you who have been watching for a while, you know that I've said a number of times that the world is going to change, and it may change in an instant. And what I have been talking about has been the influence of these devices and of our laptops and other social media that are coming through our phones, our laptops, coming through our news media, coming through any kind of discussion point, comes through even songs and culture that's going on, television programs. It's all susceptible to what's been going on. And what I'm talking about right now is the effect that Google and Wikipedia have been having on the world, and how by way of their command of these search engines and the social grouping of thinking that goes on with Wikipedia, which is mainly driven by a bunch of, fat asses sitting in their basement with a half-empty can of Pringles. These are the people that are changing the narratives and put dysfunctional thinking and lies out there as being fact, and they can change things with the self-editing that goes on. And it always slants towards the left on things. And what they're trying to do is keep bringing the voices from the right side of the spectrum and cancel them out and make it left-leaning talking points. They continue to do this, constantly bringing everything to where all of the groupthink is now no longer from the right side or the conservative side of views. It's all to the left. And this is going on as we speak. So pretty soon, there's no opinions out there in the media or in the Google search engines except for those here on the left. And we all know what happens when you get too much of a thing like that in your diet. You got to release the pressure. So what we've got going on right now is going to be a huge release of pressure that's coming from these left views that are so overwhelming the search engines and dialogue that's going on with people trying to gain information, our young people, our business people, just anyone at home trying to look for information about any topic. You will find that it all bends to the left. And I've talked about this a number of times when I tried asking about certain things that were going on in the city of Dearborn, Michigan right now, as it has become Islamicized through its mayor and other people on the town council and things like that. They've moved this normal Midwestern city to the far left fringes of things, and now it's so much so that it's basically become an Islamist city. Not a Muslim city, but an Islamist city. Muslims would, by their own definition of themselves, would try to be more tolerant. Islamists are not tolerant. It's why Islamists don't function and can't coexist in a Western society as we know it. But they want to change it all to their thinking. So Google is incredibly far left. Wikipedia is even farther left because of the groupthink that goes on with these, like I say, these people sitting in their basements at their laptops and computer screens. And they have no boundaries governed by factual realities to adhere to in this world. They can spout whatever they want out there, call it plausible deniability, and get away with it and infect the minds of our students, our people on television telling us the news, because you can tell many, many times if you want to know what the questions are going to be from a certain interview, all you have to do is go to the Wikipedia page, and these talking heads are basically going to Wikipedia to get their questions for the interviews. It happens 9 times out of 10. We don't have any real thinkers trying to pull information out of our leaders and people who are supposed to be responsible on things. That's why you get layup questions for some of these candidates over here on the left, and you get harder questions about people on the right trying to hold them accountable for sins that the people on the left did in previous administrations or right now. It's, the gaslighting principle. So what is going to change things? Well, our good friend Elon Musk is going to be releasing a new service using Grok, G-R-O-K. Now, people watching me or watching other folks need to know, get off of Wikipedia, get off of Google, get onto Grok. And Grok will help you stay sane and keep the information correct and having some balance in things. Wikipedia does not, Grok does. Grok is being supported in part here by Elon Musk in his efforts, so much so that he's going to be launching Grokopedia. And Grokopedia is going to use AI, not these fat asses sitting in their basement with a can of Pringles, to determine what the narratives really are. And AI will be used to go out to the whole body of knowledge that's out there in the world, bring it all together, and then transform it into factual, relatable evidence that we can use. This is going to blow the lids off lots of these guys because they won't be able to dance as fast as what Grokopedia can. Imagine Grokopedia being run with AI technology can take all this information out in the universe of things online, and it can take it all, filter it down in minutes, if not seconds, and it can build on that. What these people have been doing for 25 years with Wikipedia, manually entering things in and having this confusion of ideas coming into their submissions, Grokopedia will be able to take all that and then add to it at lightning speed. New information, up-to-date things. You will not be left behind with Grokopedia. Now, this is going to cause a major, major brain fart with these guys. And they are going to have a major conniption. You think you've seen anarchy and chaos so far? Just wait. When the reality comes and these people have to get hit with a full view of sunlight as they've come out of the caves, they're going to react so violently and so against society that we all have to be aware of it, because it's going to happen, and it's going to take this craziness that and people want to call it chaos. It hasn't been chaos. This has all been planned and orchestrated by certain countries and influencers trying to create this, dissension in the world. It's not chaos when it's planned and they're doing it on purpose. This is an orchestrated plan. It doesn't really know exactly what the outcome is going to be when they push a certain button, because they've never done it this way before. But they know it's going to be counterproductive to normal Western societies. And this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to break down the walls of Western society and the goals and values that have been entrenched in the Western societies, the most successful nations in the world to date have all had one thing in common, and that's the Judeo-Christian ethic, otherwise known as Western civilization. It's never had this before. You look at anyone else that has a limited or authoritarian regime or has an Islamist view of things. They're so unsuccessful, and there's a reason for it, because they don't value building and growth and self-esteem. What they want to do is put you down, keep you in a box, keep you in a certain area where you can't get away. And if you don't believe it, just watch the beatings and some of the beheadings and the honor killings and things like that. Who does that? Certainly not Christians. I haven't seen it in my lifetime, but I've seen a lot of it out of Islamists. And this is why there's this huge disconnect when they keep wanting to try to say that Islam is a religion of peace. And I keep saying, show me when it's been a religion of peace. It's never been a religion of peace. So we have to fight back against that lie, because I believe that Islamism or Islamists are probably the greatest threat to the world we have today. It's not China. It's not Russia. It's the ideology and the submission that's demanded out of Islam and what they're coming in and trying to take over Western world. England is basically done. If they don't fight back and fight back hard and soon, forget about it. I mean, they're done. They gave it all away. They haven't learned. Hopefully, though, with more information coming out that's correct through Grokopedia, it may change some of this and help disinfect some of this other bullshit that's been going on. And I can't call it anything else, because that's exactly what it is. So Grokopedia is going to help correct the errors and the misinformation that's been out there through the Wikipedia platforms. And it was very interesting to see some of the searches I've done in the last few months, how many times I would get a lecture about things when I would ask something about, like, the folks in Dearborn and the defaults on mortgages and things like that, how a quarter of the nation's mortgage fraud, and there's over 50,000 cases in the USA at this time, over a quarter of those, nearly 13,000 of them, are all in Wayne County, Michigan. One county has a quarter of the mortgage fraud in the United States in total. The Letitia James type stuff. Why? Who has moved in to take on these mortgages and defaulting on them? Or lying about who they are, what their intentions are, what their use of the property is going to be? You all know the answer to that. You don't need to Google it. Grok will tell you. Google won't. I asked Google, I got a lecture. So, along with what's been going on recently, we've had these No Kings protests that happened a couple weeks ago or whatever. It was kind of funny that it was just hilarious about the makeup of the people out in these protests, which have been described as nationwide group therapy by a few therapists out there. Had looked at everything and just saw most of these people, 40 to 80 years old, who were out protesting and calling Trump a king, and that he was trying to be a king and all these things. And they weren't realizing that a king would never allow the open protest that they were doing, or the type of speech that they were going on about, with no actual facts when asked about what has he done that makes him a king. They have no actual facts. They just said, well, he's taking Americans off the street. He's doing this. He's a criminal. He's a felon. 34 convictions. Of what? They can't tell you what the convictions are. Even the judge couldn't explain what the convictions were for, because it was all made up and no one knew how to explain it. And that's why there hasn't been any actual, conviction or sentencing done on it, because it was all BS. So the No Kings protesters out there weren't talking about facts. They were talking about feelings. And their feelings and emotions were running away with them, because they've been stirred up by the Google stuff, the Wikipedia stuff, and these talking heads on TV, these wonks who are throwing all this, regurgitated bullshit out there and saying, here's the news. But so all these people are hung up on their feelings. And what has happened right now is people on this side of the spectrum right now, and others, are conflating feelings with actual work. And the reason they're doing this is because the drain on them with dealing with these feelings that they have all the time, not based in facts, but more in fantasy. These feelings have now become their work product. And they are so drained by this that it just takes all their energy out of them. And what they've become is sort of like an addict to daytime soap operas. And I don't even know if soap operas are still on TV these days, but going back to when the advent of radio and then the television, they needed to come up with programming to fill the midday or the evenings, the quiet evenings for people. And so what they did is they came up with like these stories and called them soap operas. And these soap operas are going to be these ongoing storylines of people, a family, a town, and trying to pull all the dramatic instances out for everyone else to sort of indulge themselves in a sort of a fantasy engagement, because they felt so bored and uninspired in their own lives that they needed something else to take them away from their doldrums. People who were active and working and doing things did not exist in these worlds. They were out making things. They were doing things, creating. God lifts, God builds, the devil destroys. So a lot of these things were put in place to try to pacify folks and to gather them together. I remember there was a guy was on set one time. He was going the back lots. I don't know if it was out in California or New York or whatever, but the guy was going down through the back lots, and he saw a sign, saying General Hospital. And this was the place where they would do the filming for General Hospital. This guy was going through, and he says, "Oh, that's so wonderful. You got your own hospital here, in the studios." He thought General Hospital was real. This is a guy who grew up with it and thought that General Hospital was actually a real thing, not just a TV soap opera filmed in a controlled studio environment. So this is how idiotic these things can go. And he didn't understand that there was a disconnect from the fantasy world and the reality. And when you have somebody who's supposed to be on point being that confused, what are we to think about the rest of the herd? How confused are they? Well, I think we found out just how confused they can get. And it's very concerning. So with these no kings rallies, we had to ask, what is a king? Trying to say the things that they were saying that President Trump had done, they couldn't really point to anything directly, just their feelings, And if there was a real king, they wouldn't be allowed to do this. Now, how do we know? Well, we have actual kings in the world today who are authoritarian. And they would never let protests or opposing opinions be said out loud without shutting them down or going after them and suppressing them. Maybe arresting them, maybe just kicking them out of the country, or making them unwelcome, or excommunicating them so that they can't talk with other people in the country anymore, or in the the hierarchy. Brunei, Eswatini, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar are all authoritarian monarchies. Try pulling this shit in Brunei. See what would happen. Try it in Saudi Arabia. Try it in Qatar. Qatar and Saudi Arabia both have extensive ties to the West, the USA in particular. They've got an awful lot going on in Germany, in France, and England. And they have sent a lot of money and people into these countries to help cause disturbance, create uproar, create what they want to call social change, and funded this No Kings protest, along with the George Soroses. They said they spent like $350 million. I'd like to see where the money went. I bet you somebody got a new boat. Where did it go? Who's going to ask that question? Who's going to get a straight answer? You won't get it on Wikipedia or through Google. You might get it through Grok after some time, but it won't come out right now. So Saudi Arabia and Qatar both have really extensive networks in our country and all Western countries right now. So these guys are invaded our universities. They've invaded our NGOs or non-governmental organizations who are supposed to be doing charity type work. Catholic Charities being among those, Western Charities, and a few others that I don't have the names for right here, but they're all kind of leaned in with these church groups and giving them the money and the muscle to get out there and do this stuff. It's why you've got Catholic priests helping to lead the Antifa riots in opposition in Chicago and Portland. They've weaponized the Eucharist. They're doing Eucharistic processions to help start these things. One Father Flager and Father Ramos in Chicago working under Cardinal Supich. Probably a closet Marxist there too. He's the same guy that brought you Archbishop Grob, I forget, I've heard it pronounced both ways, Grob, who's been put into Milwaukee. And he was also kind of the hand holder for Bob Prevost, who's now Leo the 14th. Everything's connected. There's all this connective tissue between all these groups worldwide and locally. And it all comes down with the money. So, but there's another country that has even more extensive tentacles in the United States and has gained influence all throughout the world. And it can turn based on how they feel. And the CIA would describe a government like this with these active participants quietly going about their work in another country as cells or sleeper cells, having agents there that are gathering information, creating sort of a passive response in the community about them. Oh, they're good. There's nothing to see here, that type of thing. So this is how the low expectations, can help hide people. If you're not looking for them to be a troublemaker, you don't assume that they're a troublemaker. But in the meantime, they can turn on you when they decide to. So who am I talking about? Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about this guy. Authoritarian monarch. Suppresses free speech. Suppresses active dissent. Questioning of the authority that he yields and wields. If you don't believe it, let's ask guys like Cardinal Burke, Bishop Strickland, and Archbishop Vigano. 3 guys all been shut down and suppressed. Burke has kind of fought back a little bit, and he's back in the graces and has his faculties back at the Vatican. But part of the reason I think that happened is the Vatican blinked, because the conservatives still around the world still have a concern about how the progressivism has really invaded not only the Catholic Church, but all churches around the globe, all the Judeo-Christians. They're all being sort of motivated by the attacks of the Vatican upon Western societies. And I talk about that because this Pope, Leo, used to be the dicastery of bishops, and he was the guy that would assign the positions all around the world under Francis. He did a good job. He laid a lot of progressives and Marxist type people up in high positions. And these are the ones that are kind of allowing, like Supich in Chicago, allowing his priests to help lead these protests. Now, priests have been known to protest for social causes, all throughout, their existence. Somebody to help lead the crowd against the authority. To try to save the people and look out for the little guy. Well, right now they're going against half of the people, hurting them to help support this other side over here without asking this other side over here if they agree. They're just taking from this side to give to this side. That's authoritarian. I don't think Jesus would have done that. Jesus would have said, hey, can you help out? I got some people over here. The first thing Jesus did when he stepped out into his public life, actually when he was 12, and he walked away from the caravan, and Joseph and Mary found him at the temple 3 days later. The first thing he did was to go out and beg for alms from the people in the town so that he could help support the widows and the orphans. That's what he was doing. They just happened to find him at the temple. But that's what Jesus was doing. He wasn't going out and telling people how bad they were. He was saying, please, can you help me, help them? This is what he was doing. This is the way of Jesus. It doesn't force anybody. It asks for them so that they can vote with their own free will, which is the second greatest gift that God ever gave to any individual person. The first one being himself on the cross. The second one was the act of free will. Because that free will is the best way that you can show your love for God, by giving your will to God. Freely. Not as an act of submission or oppression or an authoritarian coming in and saying, you must do this. Think about that. So this Vatican has instructed the bishops in this country especially to do everything they can to thwart the efforts of the Trump administration to deport people who are here illegally and causing de facto harm to the rest of the population. People over here who haven't agreed to help with this over here. We appreciate your goals and your aspirations and your desire to help every person on the face of the earth. I'm with you. But there's a way to go about doing it that doesn't cause harm and discontent in the other side that you're going to keep as a captive hostage to pay for your acts of good work, to help you feel more virtuous about things, to help you feel that you're doing the right thing. What is the right thing? It isn't, I think, shutting down Bishop Strickland, Archbishop Vigano, and Cardinal Burke. Did any of you catch the news last week? Cardinal Burke held a Latin Mass at St. Peter's. A Latin Mass that had been traditionally held each year. I don't know if it was held by the Pope or not, but traditionally it was held each year. And they stopped it in 2022. And I think they stopped it in 2022 to help undermine the Latin Mass around the world that they were trying to do to suppress it and take the Latin Mass away from the faithful around the world so that they could sort of help take out some of these structural supports, which I think the Latin Mass is. I think it's probably the strongest sacrament that as Catholics or Christians can be exhibited. Just my opinion, but a lot of these guys over here don't like that. And they wanted to stop it. And so they shut it down. They took it out of local churches. It could only be in oratories or other places like certain monasteries and places like that around the world under the bishop's approval. Now, some bishops have outlawed the practice, if you will, in their dioceses. I know the one down in Knoxville, Tennessee, just did that now. So he said that all Latin masses will be out of the diocese, I think, by the end of this year. Pretty rough stuff for something that had such an age-old tradition, you would think. Why are they doing it? Let's get some answers to that. But these are the kinds of things that kings and monarchs do to change their kingdom to the way they see it to be fit. It's their prerogative. It's why they're kings. Donald Trump is definitely no king. I haven't seen a single king in this country shutting things down. I've seen people wanting to gaslight other folks tremendously. And this hurts not only formed brains, but it hurts developing brains of our youth, because they see this as a normal way to go about things. They don't understand the value of discipline and constructive criticism. We have to change things here quite a bit, and we have to get there sooner rather than later, because as our media and the Grokipedia is going to be changing things, and it's going to be creating more active confusion with some of our left-brained people. We're going to have to be very, very aware about what things get set off and how this disconnect with reality is going to play out. And so we have to be careful about that. So you have to really be on guard. I still think that 2027 is going to be the effective year of change. We're going to have a lot of discontent and problems this year, but it's all going to be ramping up. This is all rehearsal. This is like the preseason. They are definitely out to take down conservatives and conservative thought and ideas, because it will allow them to sort of bulldoze the turf so that they can come in and do whatever they want. And they're doing a real good job. I mean, today is November the 4th. It's election day for a lot of people on the East Coast. We're probably going to have a Marxist as a mayor in New York, Mamdani. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think the way to take somebody off their Marxist pedestal is to starve them. And the way to starve them is to cut money, because the money is going to be their tool of trade to try to gather support. And so this giveaway and all like that, he'll go through all the coffers, run all the money out. It'll all be gone. Then he's going to need more to keep his promises up, and it'll fall apart. This is what happens in Marxist governments and societies. No one's ever been successful with it. He won't be either. And if they think they're going to hold the capitalist people in New York hostage, they got to understand it can all be moved. They can move all that stuff to Nashville in a heartbeat. It's all electronic. You know, there's some infrastructure they probably have to take out, but it can all be moved. It can be done very, very quickly and very seamlessly. So we got to watch out for freedom of speech. We can't let them take it away under any means at all. You have to be free to speak what's going on, to talk about uncomfortable topics, because we've got a lot of them out there. Everywhere you turn is another topic of concern and somebody crying foul, and you can't do that. Well, somebody's got to do it, and we need to be ready for it. So in the meantime, I love you, and I'll be back.